समझ नहीं आ रहा अपने सैलरी इंक्रीमेंट का क्या करूं।
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स के एसआईपी का टॉप अप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
क्या समझ में नहीं आया?
बेटा इतना क्या सोच रहा है? अपने म्यूचुअल फंड्स का एसआईपी टॉपअप करा ले। दिस इज द राइट टाइम।
अब समझा।
Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme related documents carefully.
So let's decode Modi's visit to the G7 in Canada, to Cyprus, and to Croatia. Prime Minister Narendra Modi's presence at the G7 summit in Canada this week reflects India's growing stature in global diplomacy. Although the invitation to the summit arrived relatively late, which was on June 6th, the visit carries considerable weight. Not only because of the summit itself, but also due to Modi's stops in Cyprus, which was en route to Canada, and Croatia, which was on its way back. Two countries that are not often associated with India's high-level diplomatic circuits. This year's G7 has also drawn considerable attention for heightened tensions between Israel and Iran, and President Trump, who left the meeting midway while giving warnings to Iran on Truth Social, asking for an unconditional surrender. Now, whether or not US enters the war on the side of Israel and uses its much-touted bunker-busting bomb to take out the nuclear enrichment facilities at Fordo in Iran remains to be seen. For now, let's return to the G7 in Canada. Now, the first is, why did India go to the G7? Although not a G7 member, India has been a regular invitee to the summit since 2019. Its consistent presence underscores its evolving role as a global stakeholder. This year's G7, hosted by Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney, is particularly important as it takes place amid growing economic and security realignments across the globe, thanks to Donald Trump. Canada's decision to invite Modi also signals a diplomatic reset. India-Canada relations, I'm sure you all remember, had sharply deteriorated after 2023 during Justin Trudeau years, when Trudeau himself alleged Indian involvement in the killing of Khalistani separatist Hardeep Singh Nijjar. With Carney's election in March 2025, which is just a few months ago, relations have slowly begun to thaw. High-level meetings between Indian and Canadian security officials have already taken place, and both countries are now working on an intelligence-sharing framework to address extremism and terrorism. Now, this definitely is an indication of renewed strategic cooperation, especially after how bad things had become during Trudeau years. India's participation also has practical imperatives. It is now the fourth largest economy in the world, deeply tied to G7 countries like the US, UK, France, Germany, and Italy, as well as Japan, through trade, technology, defense cooperation, and defense industry cooperation, as well as diaspora networks. For Canada, diversifying away from an overwhelming trade dependence during an increasingly uncertain United States under a second Trump presidency is also vital. Strengthening ties with India serves both nations' long-term interest in the Indo-Pacific region as well. Now, Modi has also used the G7 outreach sessions to champion the cause of the Global South. Remember that India takes a lot of pride in being the voice of the Global South, calling for equitable development, inclusive global governance, and coordinated action against terrorism, particularly referencing Pakistan's continued support for cross-border terror networks. Now, let's come to the second C, which is Cyprus. So why did Modi go to Cyprus before reaching Canada? Modi's stop in Cyprus marks the first Indian prime ministerial visit in over 2 decades, and definitely this signals India's intent to deepen ties with a strategically located EU member, which was, by the way, a former British colony just like India. Cyprus is due to hold the rotating presidency of the Council of the European Union next year, giving it a crucial role in shaping EU-wide policies. And for its part, Cyprus has also confirmed that fast-tracking the EU-India FTA negotiations, as well as providing support for the IMEC corridor, are going to be key priorities. Then there is a geopolitical subtext. Cyprus has long had tensions with Turkey, which invaded northern Cyprus in 1974 and maintains a military presence there. Now, India's stopover is seen as a subtle but firm message to Ankara, especially in the light of recent military tensions with Pakistan. If you remember, India's Operation Sindoor, which targeted terror camps in Pakistan, drew strong Turkish support for Pakistan, including the deployment of drones and other defense aid. And what not many people realize right now is that Pakistan-Turkey military relationship is more than what meets the eye. 150 Pakistani engineers are a crucial part of Turkish fifth-generation fighter jet program, or the Khan project. Modi's visit to Cyprus, a country Turkey opposes diplomatically, reflects India's strategic balancing act. Further, India has historically supported the UN plan for Cyprus and is exploring the Mediterranean as a logistics and strategic hub with potential strategic gateways at Marseille in France, Trieste in Italy, and Thessaloniki and Piraeus in Greece. So, strengthening ties with Cyprus complements this vision and strengthens the strategic relationship with Greece in a trilateral framework as well, where the island of Crete has emerged as a site for India-Greece joint exercises, and Cyprus is not very far. In fact, in the joint statement, both leaders, which means Indian and from Cyprus, have pledged to enhance maritime cooperation, including more frequent Indian naval visits to Cypriot ports and the exploration of joint training and search and rescue operations. Now, although the specifics are not yet disclosed yet, but in my opinion, it makes perfect geopolitical sense for India to also consider playing a role in Cyprus's defense modernization, possibly offering a co-produced system like the Barak 8 surface-to-air missile, jointly developed by India and especially DRDO in India and Israel. Now, Cyprus already operates a version of the system, the Barak MX anti-aircraft system that it acquired only last year in December. And this could be a potential space for partnering for further defense collaboration, much like what India has done with Armenia in the Caucasus. Now, it is also interesting to note that Russia used to be one of the leading suppliers of weapons and defense equipment to Cyprus, and those exports have now run into trouble because of the war in Ukraine. And this is again a similarity with Armenia, where Russia used to be a leading defense supplier to that country as well. Finally, just to wrap up the Cyprus story, Prime Minister Modi was conferred the Grand Cross of the Order of Makarios III, which is Cyprus's highest civilian honor, and this reflects the importance both sides attach to this renewed engagement. Now let's visit the third C, which is Croatia, that Modi visited while on his way back from Canada. So Modi's June 18 visit to Croatia, a Balkan country in Europe, is a historic first. No Indian Prime Minister has officially visited the country before. Now this visit builds on recent momentum. Now, do you know that it was just in May 2025, which is last month, that India had its first ever Balkan conference in another Balkan country, which is Albania. And this particular conference saw participation from different EU nations, from Gulf states, etc. And this was done under the auspices of the India-EU Trade Council. So India's outreach to Croatia reflects the strategy of engaging the lesser tapped regions in Europe, and definitely the Balkans is one of such regions. This fits well into the China Plus One framework for those European players, because countries are seeking alternatives to Chinese supply chains as well as Chinese infrastructure that has been a victim of overpromise and under-delivery. In fact, this particular framework is referred to as China's 17+1 mechanism, which has not really been working, and many countries are leaving that particular mechanism one by one. European countries, especially in the Balkans, are increasingly opening themselves to deepening trade and technology ties with India, as well as more infrastructure development with India. So by strengthening ties with smaller EU member states, India aims to build new strategic gateways beyond the traditional ports, which are all located in Western Europe, which are Rotterdam, Hamburg, and Antwerp. So, engaging other parts of Europe include maritime and overland corridors that can better connect India to Europe via the Mediterranean and the Balkans, all the way to the Baltics via the 3 Seas connectivity corridor that is already functional in Europe. In Croatia, Modi is meeting with both the Prime Minister, Plenković, and President Zoran Milanović, and he would discuss trade, infrastructure, and cooperation in sectors like renewable energy, defense, education, etc. Now, to conclude, one could say that the 3 Cs of Modi's diplomacy is not just a multi-nation tour. It is a deliberate strategic maneuver which is aimed at first, reasserting India's global leadership at the G7 and building ties with Canada by deepening a win-win equation for both countries. 2, building strategic trade and infrastructure synergy across the European continent through nations like Cyprus and Croatia, which are not the big players that India usually interacts with. And third, sending geopolitical signals to adversaries such as Pakistan and Turkey while enhancing defense and economic diplomacy. So, taking together, these visits show India's aspiration to shape global narratives, secure new alliances, and craft a larger role in world affairs, despite the fact that Donald Trump is here as a chief disruptor. So, I'll be back to discuss many more developments in this regard. Stay tuned.